Today, I don't think that's the first time I met Richelle. I knew that she was worse, she was more obsessed with world culture and fantasy than I ever was. Because I thought I was the geekiest person I knew in terms of Roman and Greek mythology and then Norse. And I soon discovered she's far more well-read. And you can see it in the traces of the Vampire Academy and other work she's done. But in Soundless, you really get to see it go full bore, where she more or less says, I'm not sure if she's mined an original myth or just made it all up from little scraps of her own ideas, but we get to meet Faye in the village where everyone is deaf. And a whole culture that has been soundless so long they don't even really remember what it is anymore. And I don't think I'd really probably enjoy that too much. But we could argue later on which sense of it works to lose. And I'm not going to sit there and describe a lot of the book because probably most of you haven't read it unless you've been cheating since it only went on sale today. Please welcome Richelle Mead.
I'm glad you qualified that, Dwayne. I thought you were about to say that I was geekier than you and not amend that until you added the mythology part, but I'll go ahead and I'll take that. All right. Thank you guys for coming out. Always so fun to be in Seattle with my locals. It's always so easy to be here. You guys are always like the last group I prepare for. I've been packing all week for my upcoming tour. In fact, I've been picking out outfits for the last couple of weeks for the cities I'll be visiting, and I remembered today, like, I hadn't picked an outfit for you guys, and then I'm like, why am I overthinking it? I'm just going to put on my Seahawks shirt, and it'll be all good, because that's how we roll here. So here we are to talk about Soundless, and I'm actually not going to do a reading tonight. Usually I do, and that's usually because I'm reading from a series where we're like a gazillion books in, and it's like, oh, it's those crazy vampire kids again. Let's see what shenanigans they're into this time, you know, and we can just jump in and there's something weird with a squirrel or I don't know, something crazy like that. And we don't need any ramp up. But since there's new things coming down the line, I thought I would just talk to you like kind of what Soundless is about, where the idea came from, and what is new and exciting after this in the world of Richelle Mead. So Soundless is out today, and Soundless is a standalone, which is crazy and exciting for me because it doesn't have a cliffhanger ending, which is kind of weird for me, which means I can't just be like, heartbreak and tragedy, done. You know, that's my normal ending for a book, and it usually works quite well, but I couldn't do that this time. And Soundless came about actually, I guess the beginning of last year when I had finished The Ruby Circle, the last book in the Bloodlines series, and publishing works so far ahead, like you finish a book and then it's like ages before it comes out. And I had finished Bloodlines, that wrapped up that series, and you're at a point referred to in publishing as being out of contract, which can be a scary thing for an author because it means you have no more guaranteed work. And so I was asked, you know, hey Richelle, do you have any more ideas? Can you envision a great new series? And at the time, I had just had my second child, and I'm like, envision a new series? I can't like even envision 3 hours of sleep right now. You know, I don't even know what this means, like to, you know, think of like the next 6 books or whatever that is. But the problem was, if I did not come up with a book that far in advance, it would have been a couple of years before I had anything out. And I know there are fantastic, great authors like the J.K. Rowlings of the world and the George R.R. Martins who can go like 10 years without a book. But I like to be out and about. I like to have books out frequently. So I'm like, okay, I'll do a book. I'll just do like one book. I'll do the standalone. It's going to be short, it's going to be cool, and it's going to be something totally different. And that was where Soundless came from. I wanted to do a fantasy in a world like we've never seen before. A lot of the fantasy we read that I grew up on is always Western European based. There's nothing wrong with that. I love it. Like that was my bread and butter when I was a teen. You know, I wanted to live in European castles and, you know, and be the girl who was like a princess secretly training to be a warrior. Like there were all kinds of books like that. That's what I wanted. But there weren't a lot of fantasies like set in non-Western cultures, and so I said, you know, let's do something out of Europe. And Chinese history, there's like thousands and thousands of years of it that people just aren't aware of. And so that was kind of the premise for Soundless. And then this idea of a world where people couldn't hear presented a whole new challenge, because trying to write about someone who's never heard and then suddenly gets their hearing back is so weird, because how do you even describe it? How do you describe, like, if someone's hearing a bell ringing and they've never even used sound words, how do they know what a ring is? How do they know what a clang is? It's weird. And so it was a huge challenge for me. And I went and met with a linguistics professor that I had at Bellevue College, and that was a really cool meeting. It was cool for her because she was like, oh my God, a humanities person with a job. Like, she was excited about that, first of all. But it was cool for me because there's a huge amount of research out there with deaf people who have gotten their hearing back, and this culture shock, like, oh my God, how do you adjust to that? And so a lot of cool things have gone into Soundless, and that's kind of the story behind it. And so it's a totally kind of different one-off thing. It was good for me to kind of just wrap my brain around something different with a newborn while I was getting my life back together. And the extra exciting thing that you might like to know is that this is my mom's favorite book. Might possibly be the only book of mine she's liked. I can't quite get that out of her. I got this really weird voicemail from her. She's like, I've been reading that Soundless book of yours, and it's finally a book I really like. And I called her up. I'm like, what do you mean by that, Mom? Is it like the book you just liked the most, or did you not like the others? She's like, I don't know. She's like, I don't know about the others. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know about the others? I'm like, Mom, I'm an international success. I'm a phenomenon in Australia. Like, what do you mean you just don't know about the rest of my book? She's like, I don't know, those cliffhangers. Like, I just. So Soundless is my mom's favorite book. I hope that's a great endorsement for you. And so to shift real quick, I'll try not to talk at you too long. We'll take some questions, so it's not just me rambling here. While I was writing Soundless, as often happens, I started getting other ideas. People often ask, oh, what do you do when you're stuck and you get writer's block? And I always say, ideas come when you aren't trying to write them. And while I was trying to write Soundless, I got ideas for other books. And so the series I had been asked about, can you envision a great series? And I'd said, no, not yet. Kind of started building in the back of my mind. And that was where the idea for the next big thing came from. And that is the Glittering Court. If you got Soundless here at U Books, you probably got a sample of this. This is the full thing, just to taunt you. Look at it. Here's all of it. You only got 11 chapters. Look, here's all of them. Oh, it's amazing. Right? They sent me like 20 of these to give out to my friends, and I just want to like keep them and like dive into them like Scrooge McDuck and love them because they're beautiful. Anyways, so the Glittering Court came to me because while I was out starting to promote the Ruby Circle, I was noticing something. People often laud Vampire Academy because Rose is such a strong, kick-ass heroine, and she is. I will agree with that. However, the thing I often hear is, it's great to have a heroine who doesn't care about love. And I'm like, well, first of all, have you met Dimitri? Like, that's my first question. And second of all, why is that a bad thing? And I see this a lot in books, especially books for teen girls, this idea that love is bad and you're weak if you like love. And like girls, again, seem to get made fun of a lot if they like romances or love, like it makes them weak. And I think that's kind of a shame, like, because I like that stuff and I don't think that makes me a weak person. And so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna write a book that, when you look at it, like people look at it and it's like it's a pretty girl and look, she's got a dress and flowers, Is she a weak girl? And the answer is no. I'm trying to challenge this idea of what a girl book is. And the premise of the Glittering Court, it takes place in a fantasy world that's kind of inspired by Elizabethan England and colonial America. It's a world I made up. I can't do historical stuff because I'm too lazy with my research. But much like our own history, in colonial America, men outnumbered women 3-1, that is true. And so in this book, back in the old world, there's this company and they take poor girls and they train them up to be ladies, ship them off to the new world in the hopes of making marriages with men who have found success as plantation owners or shipping lords or whatever they have come to do. And so this series follows 3 girls. They are friends, and each book is about a different girl. And so they go off and they have adventures. And like I was saying, when you hear this, you're like, oh, it's girls, it's arranged marriages, it must be all blah, 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 fluttery. And these are girls that, you know, that's what's on the surface, but there's kick-ass stuff going on in here. There's like spy rings that they find here. There's a whole bunch of heretic conspiracies. I've drawn in on gold panning history, like even though I know that's not colonial America, I've taken stuff like from the Old West. So there's like gold claims and like these kinds of shootouts and things like that. And these girls are in the thick of it, and they're doing stuff, but they're still falling in love too, because the whole point is, like, you can have feelings and emotions, and you can still go and have adventures, and they aren't mutually exclusive. And I think that's important in a society where we are constantly wrestling with violence every day in the media. Like, why not have compassion and feelings while still having that tough side? So that's The Glittering Court, and the last thing I'll say about it, while also letting you just admire the cover one more time, because it's pretty and it's cool. What's extra cool about this is there are 3 books in the series. Each book is told from a different girl's perspective, and they follow the same timeline. So it isn't like they're sequential. And each girl's perspective will tell you a different side to the story. And so things are, even though you can like read each book individually, you can, it's just like my kids. Like, I look at that, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, they're doing that to their dad right now. I know it, like, back at home. Each book is self-standing in this series. So if you own all 3 and like your friends want to borrow them, they totally can, and it won't matter what order they read them in, because each story, each book is each girl's story. But you'll read things in the book, and like someone will walk into a room and you'll be like, that guy didn't seem to do anything. Like, why did he walk into that room? And then when you read the other girl's book, you'll be like, oh my God, he was the spy who was totally doing that thing. But you don't need to know that information to enjoy one book. But once you've read all 3, you're going to see how all the stories overlap. And so I think that'll be cool for you guys. It's super hard for me because I have to have a lot of stuff in place. But that's the fun thing with The Glittering Court. That will be out in April. 11 chapters for you tonight if you get Soundless. So that is my pitch on all the new and exciting things in the world of Richelle Mead that are not vampires right now. I know that makes some of you sad that I will not be writing Vampire Academy until I'm 80. But it is what it is. I know, we're going to write like Vampire Nursing Home. Will be later series. But we can talk about them, or we can talk about other stuff. We can do like 10 or 15 minutes of questions if you want. It can be about Vampire Academy, anything else. For some reasons, lately my signings keep degenerating into reality TV and shows on the CW. I don't know why that is. I was in New York this spring, and like we ended up talking about Arrow and The Flash. And the thing with New York is like all my publishing people are there, and you could just see they're like, why aren't you selling books? Why are you talking about Stephen Amell's biceps? And I'm like, because they're awesome. So, you know, if you want to go there, we can, but we can talk about anything. So feel free, whatever questions you've got. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Elda, and I was wondering, have you ever written a book that you've always wanted to read?
Written a book that I've ever wanted to read?
Yeah.
I want to read all of them. I mean, that is kind of why I write them. The books I write are, I mean, they're things I'm interested in. I guess there's a certain author mindset where people have a pure purpose. You know, maybe they're trying to inform or jump on some kind of commercial thing. But usually the books I'm writing, it's because this is a story I think is super cool, and I want to get that out there. So that's kind of what I go into with all of mine. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you like writing books about vampires?
I do like writing books about vampires. I do. That's why I got into it back, geez, it's been a lot of years now. We're coming on 10 years now. That many? When did I... 9 years, I guess, since I actually wrote the first vampire book. I did. It's fun. I like fantasy creatures. I grew up wanting it all to be real. Like, not like scary vampires. I don't like those. Mine are kind and gentle vampires. But I love all that stuff. Yeah, questions?
Don't you ever think about writing kids' books?
Do I ever think about writing kids' books? I do, actually. I don't know that I'd be very good at it, but my son, who is 4 years old, is very excited about books now, and he's starting to understand that I write books. And he actually the other day was telling me he wants to write a book, and he wants me to help him. And it's about a penguin who loses a ball, and it goes in the ocean, and the penguin swims after it, and then loses it again, and he swims some more, and then he sees a submarine, and he swims some more, and I'm not sure if he ever finds the ball. We kind of lost the thread, but if I can kind of like get him to focus on maybe some subplots and some escalating action, you know, maybe I could do a kid's book. Maybe we can go there. Yes.
What kind of say do you get in the girl chosen for the cover?
That is a good question. What kind of say do I get in the girl chosen for the cover? I used to get no say back in the day, back when Vampire Academy was like bargain basement clip art book cover. But now these are like photo shoot. Like this is a big production in New York. It's kind of crazy. Like they clear this whole day and they go to a studio and they like fly in models from different places and do this whole thing. And I was actually shown several model choices for each girl because they've already shot each cover for the 3 girls in the 3 books. And so I got to pick my favorites of the potential girls for each cover. However, I have found a few different times this has happened is that they show you all these great girls and they're like, oh, pick your favorites. And you're like, great, and you rank them. And like without fail, well, that girl, she's not available that day. And oh, she dropped out. And this girl had a death in the family. So like it ends up like there's ever only one girl available. But they're all New York models and they're all beautiful. And they did a really good job. So, yeah. Mm-hmm. Other questions? Yeah.
For your new book series, it's like reimagined history, I guess.
Yes.
So how much do you draw on like the revolutionary times? Like how much do you insert your own? Like what's original and what do you borrow from? Like do you use use history as an outline and just add to it?
I use details from it. It's a good question. So what's history and what's me? Without getting into too many specifics, mostly for time, not because it's a secret. I kind of build the world with elements inspired from it, and partially that's just to give me the control to tweak what I need. And so I'm just trying to think if I can give you an example of this. So there's a lot of the stuff. So like. There's a section of this new world that I've created. Like the colonies are spread out kind of like the English North American colonies were. Like each colony was kind of founded for a purpose. You had like kind of the mid to southern colonies were more like for financial purposes, like the Jamestown colonies. And so in this world, that's very much what it is. You find a lot of the merchants there, the people who are prosperous. And so I've kind of drawn that, and then when you get up north more to like the Massachusetts colonies, you get into kind of the Puritan, the people who are there for this religious element, and that's kind of what's in this book. And so I've kind of built those elements, but of course they aren't Puritans. You know, I'm not using our religious system or using those exact terms, but the culture is there. I don't know if I'm explaining it very well, but it's loosely based on it, and then I put in my own kind of terms and systems. Did that help at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's my question. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it is a good question. It's a hard one. It's a big question. That's the thing. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
PC or Mac?
PC.
And what does your writing space look like? Do you just write when you're inspired, or do you have a dedicated space?
I have a dedicated space, and then I got a Surface little tablet thingy, and now like the kitchen table has become my space, which is really weird because it's just so slim and convenient, and plus I can keep it in my purse.
Mama.
Like I have a good sized purse and it fits in here, and I can take it with me and I can write on the plane and other places. And so my office is kind of abandoned, which makes my office cat really sad. So I need to kind of get back in there.
we expect the next Age of X book coming?
Oh my gosh. I thought I was going to dodge that. And the Vampire Academy movie, like I sit here and I'm like, I hope I can get through. Age of X 3 does not have a publishing home right now. So, although it exists, like the premise exists, it's not forgotten. Like I saw some people angrily posting on my Facebook page, like, Richelle Mead's given up. Why won't she just come out and tell us? Why is she continuing with this subterfuge? And it is not. I have not given up. It's a story I like quite a bit, but it does not have a publisher at the moment. And with so many YA projects going on, they've kind of pushed it to the side. My agent is looking for a publishing home for it. And like I said, the story's all there. That was one of the other conspiracies that was like, I don't think Richelle Mead knows how to finish it. I think she just ran out of ideas. I'm like, no, I don't write it if I don't know where it's going. So it is there, but I don't have a date for you. I think I mentioned this at my previous signing, if any of you were here, which is someone did buy the television options, a production company to Age of X. Like I tell people this to make them happy, that since the third book is like, like has no date, even though television rights are like also equally far-fetched and nebulous. But I'm told this production company went and pitched it to networks in Hollywood. So that's cool. But again, they're like one of like thousands of people pitching to networks, so it may come of, nothing may come of it, but it's a start, right? They're knocking at the door, and like it was real networks too. When I heard it, when they told me they pitched to TV networks, I was like, is it like networks I've heard of? Like is it like public access somewhere? Is it like they're like no, and they were. It was it was like they were like pay TV channels and like the CW and some others, but again, I don't know what the status is. So hopefully someday I'll have some cool Age of X news for you guys. You're very patient. Yeah.
So I know you ask this question like every time, but any news on another Stormborn book?
Stormborn book. Okay, well that's a little different than the Age of X book because sort of Stormborn is kind of finished and kind of not.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, it had like an artsy ending. Like I thought it was cool and people didn't think it was cool and I'll be honest, usually I don't care. Like that's another thing I see online, like, oh, I bet Richelle cares how we feel about the endings. And I'm like, oh, you know what, that's how I wanted to end it. I'm sorry you guys cried. But that one kind of bugs me, like, because I wanted to kind of do more, so I don't know, there's so much other stuff stacked now because there is the YA stuff, and then there is Age of X, which actually does take precedence over the maybe an ending, maybe not an ending to Stormborn. So it is there. I really haven't abandoned it. It is something I'd like to do, but like, Age of X is sketchy, and like Stormborn is like a million times sketchier. But it could happen. It could happen. Yeah. Sorry. Someone asked me something with a definitive answer. Yeah? No? Nothing? Yeah.
Do you have any advice for people that would like to write?
I see. That's something I can answer. Advice for people who would like to write. A few things I always tell people to write, who want to write, is write what you are interested in. And this kind of goes back to the earlier question, writing what you'd like to read. Write what you're passionate about. I do seriously see people who get hung up on what they think others want to read. And I will never forget an early book signing I had. I don't remember where it was at. I want to say Miami. I don't know why that sticks in my head, but a woman came up to me and she was like, wow, this YA gig seems like a really good deal. How do I cash in on this and write a book? And I'm like, well, that's kind of the wrong attitude, to come in with this. I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand wanting to pay your bills, but you gotta approach it with like, wow, this is something I want to do and this is something I'm really interested in, because that's going to make a good book. I think we've all read books from people who are trying to cash in on the YA scene, and they read very superficial and very thin. And when you have an idea that you're really into, it shows really well in the book. And it doesn't matter if it's the weirdest idea in the whole world, or if it's an idea we've seen 100 times. You know, it's the forbidden romance. Like, people will say like, oh wow, that's so original, and it's really not. Like, it's in every book, but when someone puts a cool spin on those star-crossed lovers, it feels really fresh and new because it's in how you tell it, and it's in how your passion comes through. So basically, you know, if you're starting off writing, just forget what people are going to say about it. You know, write what you're into. And the other thing is be kind to yourself. People will say like, oh, this isn't good enough to be published. My writing's no good. It doesn't have to be published. You just got to get started. You got to get those first pages out. Maybe you scrap them, maybe you don't. Just keep writing, because the people who are waiting for their first book to be like the instant perfect bestseller but never actually write it don't have any book at all. Write something and see what happens. Time for one more? Anyone? Yeah.
How long does it take for you to finish a book?
To finish writing a book? I can finish, the fastest I ever wrote a book was Blood Promise in 4 weeks. It was awful. It was awful. It was terrible. It was because that was when the series started taking off, and they moved up the deadline, and they made it worth my while, and I, like a fool, said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. It was terrible, and the book turned out fine, but that is the fastest I've ever done it. My normal turnaround for a first draft is 2 months. And the first draft is not perfect by any means, so when I say 2 months, don't think that like what you're reading on the shelves took that long, because you do that first draft, and then you do a second draft, and then you do, I don't want to say a third draft because you're not rewriting it, but you're still modifying it, and then you're proofing it, and then you're proofing it again. And from start to finish, you know, I think it almost ends up being 9 months, which is fitting because it is kind of like, you know, having a child by the time you're done. And there's a lot of people involved in that process. There's, once you get through the stuff I do, like the first couple drafts are on me. There's editorial people looking it over, you know, to say like, wow, that character just did something completely ridiculous. And so it becomes a very big involved process. Mm-hmm. But everyone's got their own pace, so don't compare yourself to that. I know people who write faster than me, and I know people who write slower. The person I know who writes the fastest is Richelle Mead. You know, it's crazy. Like, I don't know. Authors like measure their word count because that's just what we do. And like 2,000, if I do 2,000 a day, like I feel like I've done a good job. And I'll like log into Twitter, and like I haven't even had my coffee yet, and Richelle Mead's like, wrote 6,000 words, gonna go to lunch and then write some more. And I'm like, how did you even do that? And she's just like knocking out books. So, you know what, everyone's got their own thing, and I know people that take 5 years to write a book, you know, it's just where you're at and where your muse is at.